Hey, hi, hello, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Jess, and you know where I am now in Europe, in Germany, and I still don't have my things. So you get this. This is the cover of the book. I don't know if you can see it. I think you can see it. If you're like, what's that disturbing image? That is the cover of the book that I'm going to be talking about today. I also know you're like, God damn, finally that bitch changed out of that Patagonia fleece. You're correct. Look, I'm living out of suitcases right now, but I did have to go and leave the house today. So I have on something else. But we are here today to talk about a book, a recent release. It's called Half His Age by Jennette McCurdy. I have a lot of feelings about this book. I started reading the ebook and I read 30% that way, and I finished the rest with the audio. I regret both decisions. I regret what my eyeballs saw and what my ear holes heard. So that's up front. I'm, obviously I don't know what it's titled or what the thumbnail, but I personally do not recommend this book. It made me angry, and I'm going to try to explain to you why. I finished it a few days ago. I've been trying to collect my thoughts. I like to read other people's reviews, not to take what they're saying, but for what sometimes people can put into words what I can't. So I gave it 1 star. Is that fair? Reading is subjective, so who cares? Anyway, Half His Age is Jennette McCurdy's first foray into fiction. Her first book was a memoir called I'm glad my mom died. I'm so glad my mom died. I'll pop it in here. I read that. I listened to the audio as I do with all memoirs. It was read by her. And I just always think that adds, an extra layer to a memoir when it's read by the author. I did not grow up watching her. I think I was out of that age group when she was on Nickelodeon. But I had seen her face, the show that she had with Ariana Grande, but I never watched it. So it was very interesting, especially when did her memoir come out? Was it 2023? I'm not sure, or 2024. And then there were the documentaries about Nickelodeon and just all of these conversations about children and child stars. And I've watched a lot of that. So it was really interesting to read that. She really went through a lot with her mother and growing up as a child actor and just all of the things that come with that, relationship troubles, eating disorders. I do recommend her memoir. So when I saw she was coming out with a fiction book, I was like, oh, I'm very interested to see how she writes fiction versus nonfiction. Well, it was a book. Warning! This review will have some spoilers and some graphic language. This, so far, from what I have seen, people either loved it or hate it. I'm on the hate. Now, I am no one to say that a certain subgenre or certain type of story doesn't need to be written anymore. I mean, I can say that because this is my opinion. I'm not trying to say, am I? I don't know. I have complicated feelings about this type of story. These grooming, inappropriate teacher-student stories. Notice I didn't say romance. Also, hold on. I want to read some of the blurbs for this. Now, I don't put too much stock into blurbs because I just don't think they hold that much weight. They're really used just as a marketing tactic. It's not necessarily that the person read the book and or loved the book. So anyway, I'm just going to read some of the, this feels weird to hold with my left hand, some of the blurbs I see for this book. We have a thorny examination of power, lust, shame, and rage from a writer able to capture some of the darkest parts of human nature with unflinching honesty and devastating humor. Unapologetic and undeniable. If there was ever any doubt whether the narrative command that Jennette McCurdy displayed in her best-selling memoir, I'm Glad My Mom Died, might translate to fiction, let it henceforth be put to rest. Half His Age is a highly anticipated, funny, sad, thrilling novel about sex, class, desire, and power, and the often misguided links will go to get what we want from Jennette McCurdy, the 3 million copy best-selling author of I'm Glad My Mom Died. The often misguided lengths we go to get what we want. Shocking, honest, and unsparing. A hilarious and uncomfortable triumph. Eerie, unsettling, and believable. Thought-provoking. Shocking and darkly comic. I'd like to go back to, I see many saying like darkly funny, shocking, honest, sure. I'm really stuck on this. And the often misguided links will go to get what we want. Okay. What we want. All right. Half his age is following a student, 17, her teacher, 40. Okay, petty things that I hated. Her name is Waldo. Not a nickname. Her name just appears to be Waldo. That's fucking stupid. Sorry. And the teacher's name is Mr. Corgi. Okay. And it probably was a narrative choice that she always called him Mr. Corgi. She never called him by his first name. Fine. But like hearing Mr. Corgi, I just kept the way she described him as this 40-year-old man with a paunch and all those things. I kept like imagining that, but like crossed with a corgi, like a dog. So it was a really weird visual image because I'm a very visual person. You describe things on the page and I see it in my brain. Unfortunate. It isn't, I forgot what that thing is called, but it is unfortunate to be a person who visualizes things that an author describes when reading this book. Terrible experience for me. So that's what I kept seeing every time she was describing this. So just that added to the level of that I experienced with this book. I take issue with this type of story and putting comedic with it. I didn't think anything in this book was funny. I don't think you need this type of story to have a comedic element because nothing about it is funny. So I don't like that. I also don't like the description of the unreasonable lengths or whatever they said to get what we want. Are you referring to the student or the teacher? Both I don't like. I just don't like that description. I know I'm getting hung up on that. I think there's a lot of issues with this book, especially if you read, even before I listened to the audio, especially if you read her memoir, it feels very, I'm not going to say a continuation, but it does feel heavily influenced, which is fine. A lot of people take their real life and write fiction stories from that. She does talk about abuse and, not inappropriate relationships and, unhealthy relationships that she was in. I don't remember everything, but then getting into this book, I don't know if this was an exercise in, releasing that trauma or trying to work through it, which is valid, right? That's valid for you to write it. Doesn't mean I had to like it.
My first relationship was with somebody who was in his mid-30s and I was 18. I would say there's some loose inspiration from there, but Waldo is a character entirely her own. And I would say she's one aspect of my personality really amplified, really leaned into, and really explored, but she certainly is her own character.
I'm going to come back to that, but I wanted to add in that clip. I found this after I recorded this review, but I'm going to come back to the part of Waldo is her own character because I disagree. But it reads almost like her memoir. I think that worked in her memoir because she was telling a personal story. So her style of writing, especially narration, really worked in her memoir because, did I mention she narrates this audiobook? Terrible decision. Again, the way she talks and narrates the story in the memoir, fine. But for this story, again, I think that made it harder to separate the memoir from this. But I even had this problem when I was reading it as an ebook. And also, she's just not a good narrator for this. It's just monotone. Everybody sounds the same. I guess a positive is that, normally if you read a book on 1x speed, you're normally like, oh my God, it's so slow, but she's speaking pretty fast. So usually I have my book to 1.75 and I had to slow it down to like 1.25 because she was talking so fast. So, I guess that's a positive, but I think it was a terrible idea for her to be the narrator. But again, I feel like this feels personal to her. And again, a thinly veiled, this is fiction. Whatever. These types of stories are always going to be uncomfortable, dark. That's what comes with the subject matter. Like nothing about a student being groomed and manipulated by their teacher should be comfortable, should be cozy, should be romantic. Like, that's not at all what I would expect from a story. But I feel like she wrote this, it's so graphic and like unnecessarily so. And I don't want to be a prude. I read smut, okay? I read it in the fan fictions, I read it in the books. I like sex, okay? Obviously I don't like it when it shouldn't be happening, but it makes sense in a story where this inappropriate relationship is happening that there's going to be sex. But the thing is that I don't feel the language she chose to use. Oh my God. And that was probably again on purpose to be like, this should make you uncomfortable. But the situation already made me uncomfortable. I don't need all of my vagina pulsed and
his knees buckle. He explodes into my mouth, and I swallow his warm, runny liquid like it's my jealousy. It's a 2-for-1. His pleasure and my pain sliding down my throat at the same time. One drop escapes and dribbles down my chin and falls. His dick is in my mouth when she calls. Shit, I should probably take this, he says. I pull my lips off him, and as he apologizes, his penis goes flaccid. By the time he clears his throat and answers the call, it's shriveled up to its resting state.
And his dick being bloody from her period blood and her asking him to slap her in the face with it. Like, it just felt like she wanted to be like, ooh, I want to make, here's shock, gross, but it already is. It's already bad enough.
There's a lot of sex writing in this book, and there was only one way to write that sex writing. I actually did, it sounds bad, but I think it was a very good thing that I got pushback from my editor. I felt like he wanted me to write sex in a more flowery way, and ultimately I just could not, because that's not how this young woman views sex. That's not how I view sex. It's not how really anybody I know views sex. I think there can be so much anger underscoring sexual encounters, specifically at a young age, and there can be so much shame behind it. And I really, really wanted that to come through. I wanted the aggression of sex to come through, how animalistic it can be, just what a primal, almost violent act it can feel like. I really, really wanted to write sex in that way, not in a poetic way at all. I have this rule with writing where it's like, if I don't use a word in a conversation, I'm not putting it in a book. Like, Lilliputian is not going anywhere in a book that I write. And so that was really, really important to me. And I honestly, I love the sex writing in this book.
Stand on business on what you write. So I'm glad that she loves it. But I thought I don't use words that I don't use in daily conversation. I mean, do you, but I don't think that's the brightest rule for writing. But also, again, this is very personal. And that's fine. I did not expect poetic writing of sex in any way. I honestly didn't expect so much of it to be described. And so it makes sense if this is how she views sex. And that's sad because obviously individual experience, but I didn't as a youth. I do not now view sex in that way. So maybe that's why I didn't like it, because I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to share that clip because she obviously is like, I stand by this sex writing. And I'm like, girl, I fucking hated it.
I'm like, so we already had enough. We already had enough of the way you were talking about him and his body in a way to portray him as unattractive. And then the way she just always described this, or how many she'd go on Instagram and masturbate to his Instagram profile. So I don't think the writing worked. And the narration was a terrible choice. I also don't feel I understand truly the purpose of the story. I don't feel it gave anything the way it is structured. We meet her, she meets his teacher, the relationship begins, and then it's the back and forth of trying to hide it, even though they're not hiding it that well, and yet they don't get found out. Of course, he's married and he has a child. And then the inevitable part of, I'm going to leave my wife, and then him actually leaving his wife for this 17-year-old. And then the 17-year-old is like, never mind. Like, he's taking them on a vacation to Hawaii and she dips and leaves. And like, it just ends. I just feel like, I guess asking for this to say more, maybe that's not fair, because there's enough said in like the story in itself of like, this is gross. I saw some people in their review saying that they read the teacher, the adult, like they felt McCurdy was trying to make him out to be the victim. I didn't pick up on that, or that's not how I felt. Like, he read like a sleazy, fuck boy of a man, right? Like somebody is making him feel he's getting attention for somebody young, and he's already, down on himself for not following his dreams, not being whatever, not making a lot of money. And now this young girl is for some reason interested in him, and he wants to be like, no, no, because they're like, she's the aggressor, she's the pursuer. And sure, there are but in the beginning, she's making it very clear, like, I want you. I want to be with you. I want to do things with you. But he's an adult who also invites her to his home with dinner with his wife. Text her. So I'm like, I was not reading this as this the man was a victim at all, because he's not. He's very complicit, and it's just another way of seeing how people can be groomed, even if it doesn't appear like this person is the pursuer or this person is like really trying to go after them, because a normal, well, dare I say normal? A man with sense, self-respect she wouldn't be coming to dinner. We wouldn't even be starting there. I would be like, this is a student. You can see promise in a student and want to nurture that in their writing or whatever it is without crossing a boundary that he did. And so I don't see him as a victim at all. I just see him as a pitiful punk bitch of a man, which he is. And so I guess there is a point for the book, is showing kind of a different aspect of not just this he's not super wealthy. He is in a position of power simply from the dynamic of teacher to student, but he's not the super wealthy, super attractive, like very much coming on to the student. From what we see, it looks the other way, that she's very dogged in her pursuit of him. However, it should not matter what a child is telling you, showing you. You as an adult should be no. And there should be no coming to your home or texting. And when that person isn't getting the hint that you need to involve other people to be like, hey, I'm not feeling comfortable. This student keeps blurring these lines. But no, he didn't do that. So he's very culpable in this story. So I don't understand where anyone's painting him as a victim, or felt like McCurdy was painting him as a victim. But so other than that, I will give the book that for maybe showing a different way the adult can present in this situation. But I still feel like it just felt like a crudely written story, like an exercise maybe to deal with the feelings that she has about something, and just written for shock value and not for just shock value. And I don't like that.
It centers around a relationship with a very clear power imbalance between a 17-year-old and her high school teacher. What made you want to explore this theme?
I'm really interested in themes of desire and power, and the things that we desire being confused with some form of power. I think, sex being the most prominent example. When I was younger, I really confused sexuality with power. When I first started developing and first started feeling, attractive to men and started getting that kind of attention, I really believed that was power. And I really believe now, as a 33-year-old, it is not. I think one of the biggest motivators was maybe anger, some anger I felt toward situations I'd been in the past that sort of emulated some version of the dynamic that's in the book. And anger is a really useful emotion for me in writing. I find it to be kind of the place that I write what I think the most effective work from. I didn't even realize it at the time. I thought, why is this the thing that's coming out? And then I'd try to check that part of my mind and just keep typing. Right. And then after looking back a few drafts, I mean, it's been many, many drafts now, but a few drafts in, I realized, I'm still really fucking angry about some of this. And this needed to come out.
Okay, that's the last clip I'm entering, but this makes sense. It feels like it was written angrily. And if that's the way she wants to process things, that's totally fine. But I wanted to insert that because it just explains more how personal this is to her and how she approached the writing.
So I really disliked this. Again, it felt like there was no story, like there was no plot. It was just like, here's this, and then it ends. And then also another reason why I feel like it's drawing on personal experience is the relationships that she had with her mom, who was hardly around and always just like, this is not a direct parallel. This is not like a direct how her mom was in real life, but like she doesn't have a great relationship with her mom. Her mom is sometimes there, sometimes not, working part-time jobs, very focused about men and her dating situation and less focused on raising her daughter. And there's also, almost would say I would give it points, but it's just weird how it is written into the novel. There's so many little comments on like consumerism and, of kind of dealing with mental health things by shopping and touching on like social media and trends and things, because we'll see Waldo trying to deal with emotions, whether that's with Mr. Corgi or her mom or the friends that she has, and her being like, I'm going to go on Shein and go shopping, or I'm going to go here and I'm going to spend $150, even though I only have $197 to last me 2 weeks. And so I was like, okay, I can kind of appreciate the commentary you're making here, but it was just kind of like put in. Like, it is commentary, but I just don't think it was like well done. This just felt like so shoved together. To me, the entire story doesn't feel like it was written with intention or to craft a well-rounded, layered story. It felt like these are some thoughts that I've thought about and I'm jamming them all on a page, and it's going to be like shock and horror, and people are going to buy it because so many people bought my last book, and the publishers are like, damn right, this is going to fucking sell, and let's not edit it and let's just put it out there. We already know publishing has an editing problem. They don't have enough editors because they don't want to pay people. And so every book is not getting the attention it deserves. And we see already with very popular authors, Brandon Sanderson, Sarah J. Maas, that once they get to a certain place, they're hardly edited, or they don't have to listen to editors as much as a new book coming in. But I also feel like someone like Jeanette McCurdy, who sold so many copies of her memoir, and people are, there probably were a lot of pre-orders, a lot of buzz about this book. They're probably like, all right, it's fine. It wasn't fine. It wasn't fine. It was horrible. And so if for some reason you want to read a book like this with a teacher preying on a younger person, I saw somebody describe it as age gap, and I was like, bitch, that's not a fucking age gap relationship. This isn't, ugh. My Dark Vanessa was a much better book. Like, I just think that one is genuinely well written. And this was not. This was choppy. And this is going to come as a shock because I love short chapters, but sometimes it'd be like, I don't know, a paragraph, end of chapter. This was choppy. This was, I don't feel like it was really written with intention. And I'm just really disappointed in it. I wouldn't say I would give up completely on Jeanette for a fiction writer. However, if the next fiction book that comes out is anything in this kind of anything near to this subgenre, I'll skip that. I will skip that. And I also think she does not need to narrate audiobooks. Like, it was horrible. It was just like, this is my voice for every single thing. And then Waldo went over here, and then he came over here, and he grabbed my boob, and then I grabbed his dick, and yeah, and then we had sex, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then the next day I went to school, and my friend was asking me to go to Bible study at the Mormon church, and then my mom came home, and she was like, oh, there's a fish sticks in the freezer, and I was like, yay, thank you. And then I went to bed, and then I was scrolling on Instagram, and I saw Mr. Corgi's page, and I masturbated, and then I went to sleep, and I got up the next day, and I went to school, and I saw Mr. Corgi, and we met in the broom closet, and somehow no one heard us having sex, even though I was screaming. And then I walked out, and then I went to go meet up with this boy who's actually my age, who I'm trying to distract myself with because me and Mr. Corgi shouldn't be together. Like, that is literally how she narrated that story the entire time. I'm going to link this Goodreads review. I'm not going to read all of it, but this was one that really captured how I felt. And they said this was vulgar and deeply off-putting. Correct. There was no finesse to this book. That's an excellent way to put it. It feels raw, not raw in a way that feels real, but raw in a way that stinks, and I feel offended. There's a glaring disconnect between the sexual awareness attributed to her and the way her voice is written. At times, she reads like a 10-year-old. I'm aware that sometimes this kind of dissonance is an intentional literary choice used to add depth into a character and show the extent of their abuse. Here, it's hard to tell whether it's deliberate or simply the result of careless writing. Either way, the prose feels fractured and disjointed, and it ultimately detracts from the story. Yes. But it says, I never knew how I was meant to feel about Waldo. Was I supposed to pity her, be repulsed by her, root for her, mourn her? Too little attention is given to uncovering her background or to depicting the grooming that precedes her pursuit of her 9-year-old married teacher. The book reads as though it were written for readers already familiar with the author's background and personal story rather than as a fully realized novel intended for a general audience. The result, I didn't care for Waldo at all, which I think is the book's greatest failure. Which again, I feel like it's basically like an extension of Jeanette. Waldo just feels like an extension of that. She doesn't feel like her own person. And regardless of the fact that Waldo's not likable, for me, of course, that doesn't erase the fact that she is being groomed and manipulated by a grown man, but still she was like insufferable as a person to be in her head. That emotional disconnect extends to the novel's broader ambitions to create commentary. The author takes a familiar narrative about a young girl with a dysfunctional mother and a traumatic upbringing and tries to make it feel transgressive by leaning into crassness and shock. What I find interesting is that Waldo's position as both victim and participant in her own harm, but unfortunately the framing never feels thoughtful or interrogative. Instead, it feels exploitative. In the end, what could have been a meaningful exploration of power, abuse, and grooming, childhood trauma, and vulnerability instead reads as hollow and sensationalized. Which leaves me asking, what was the point of writing a story like this? What exactly was the target? Now, I will disagree with the participant in her own harm, only not in the sexual relationship. I think just only in maybe things she does outside of that, but that's just ultimately a result of trauma, of like the neglect from her mother because of how I say the only thing I'm saying that she's a participant in her own harm is kind of like how she teaches friends like who are her actual age. But I think that's just a way that she's coping or doesn't know how to cope because of the dysfunctional relationship she's had with her mother. And now it's not helping being in this situation with this old man. But that was one of my favorite reviews on Goodreads that really put it into words how I felt. That just felt like this was written for shock. And I don't really understand the point of it. But some people did like it a lot. And I was not one of those people. So if you've read it, I would love to know your thoughts below. Or how do you feel about this type of book? I don't know if there's more that can be said. But again, we could say that about a lot of things. And then sometimes an author comes up with something that has been done 10 times before, but they really put a different spin on it. Their character work is really good or their writing is just outstanding. So who knows? But I'm very disappointed in this one. It is only February, but it's probably going to make it on my worst of the year. Hate that for me.
Because I can anticipate that people are going to feel some type of way, I am not trying to say that you are not allowed to process your trauma in whatever way that you choose. I am saying that as a book, as a narrative story, as a work of fiction, I did not enjoy how this was written. I did not enjoy the story. This is not trying to victim blame or shame or say that somebody can't do whatever they want to process past traumas or abuses. I know that somebody was going to jump to some kind of conclusion. So I just wanted to say that.
Share your thoughts down below. Keep it cute. Keep it respectful. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed, hydrated, moisturize, and sunscreen. I'll see you in my next one.